Well, hello and welcome to this video. It's going to be a processing video of an astro image of the Orion Nebula. I'm going to be processing this in Photoshop. I stacked everything in Deep Sky Stacker, so I'm doing this kind of as a tutorial. I found myself it was a little confusing exactly what to do, how to do it. There's different techniques out there, and this is kind of what I've finally settled on as kind of my workflow and routine, and thought I'd share that with people. So here I've got Photoshop open. I'm going to open the TIFF file, the autosave TIFF file, and let me get to the folder. Go to Orion Nebula. And this photo here was taken without tracking, so it was like 260 some odd light frames. I don't remember how many darks and biases I took, maybe about 10 each. And so this is a good example of maybe the image is going to be a little bit darker than a lot of images out there. As you can see here, the histogram is all the way pretty much bunched up on the left. Not quite clipping, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to open that. It's a 32-bit TIFF file coming out of Deep Sky Stacker. My Photoshop opens up in Camera Raw, and here it converts it to 16-bit automatically, so I'm not sure if your version of Photoshop does the same or not. Say if not, if yours opens directly into Photoshop, you would need to go into Image Mode, and 32 bits per channel will probably be click. You'll need to select 16 bits per channel, and then an HDR toning dialog box should come up. Then you need to change that setting to exposure and gamma. Set exposure to 0, gamma to 1.0, and that'll get you to where you need to be. So the first thing that I need to do, they say that file coming out of Deep Sky Stacker has some, they call them artifacts around the edges, so they suggest cropping the image just slightly on all four sides. So that's what I'm going to do here. Hit enter. Then I just go to view, fit on screen. So as you can see, this image is really dark. Next thing I'm going to do is set a white point. So what I'm going to do is go into, a dark point, I'm sorry, so I can gauge the background darkness. I kind of want it to be at a certain level. So I'm going to go here and layer, new adjustment layer, threshold, hit OK. Now if I move this over, it's going to kind of brighten up where all the stars are, where you can't see it. But what I'm trying to do is find an area of darkness, which is, this looks good. So I'm going to hit the eyedropper tool, right click. I want to do color sampler and click in a dark area. So as you see, as I move my cursor around this eyedropper tool, if you look up here in the right, RGB in the info panel. If your info panel is not showing, you just need to go into Window and click Info, and it'll come up. So I set that point here, and you see it's 0, 0, 0. So all red, green, and blue channels of that point are 0. And that's going to be it. I'll back out of here. Fit on the screen. I don't need this threshold layer anymore, so I'm just going to drag that to the trash can and delete it. But now, as you can see, well, actually this reference point here, which is point 1, is showing RGB as 777. So that's going to be important as we continue. Now I need to I want to get the background darkness at least up to 19 or 20, because you don't really want it darker than that. It's going to maybe not look natural. So I'm going to go into image or layers, new adjustment layer, hit levels, hit OK, and here the histogram comes up. Typically when you do these astro images, there's a little space on the left side here of the graph and the histogram. You can move, this is the black point slider, you can move it over to the right. Apparently I don't have any space or room to do that, but I need to try to increase these numbers. So what I'm going to do is move this midpoint slider with the gray slider over to the left, and now you can see how these numbers are increasing here on the reference point. So 18, 20, 20. So now what I'm going to do, actually I'm going to bump this up to maybe about 35, and you'll see why I want to do that. Well, let me just say 30 roughly. They don't have to match. And then I'm going to hit Shift, Control, Alt, and E. So Shift, Control, Alt, E. That's going to create a new layer on top. So now I'm going to go into Levels, Image, or Layers, new adjustment layer, Levels, OK. Now as you can see, the histogram has moved away from the left side of the image, and it's the Orion Nebula is showing. You can see more of that, but like I said, I want to keep this background darkness around 19 or 20. So what I'm going to do is go into each individual color channel here in Levels. So under I click this, under RGB there's red. I'm going to move this black point slider to the right until the number up here in the reference image on the right side for RG and B are down to 19. So I move it. Now the red channel is at 19. I do the same for green, and then the same for blue. So see, now all of these are 19, 19, 19. I can close that out. Hit Shift, Control, Alt, E. Creates a new layer on top. Now I'm going to go into Curves, Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Curves. So we're going to do an alternating Levels, Curves adjustment. Hit OK. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this kind of midpoint right here, I'm just going to bring it up straight, kind of diagonally. What I like to do, watch that reference point black reference point, these numbers here, I'm going to move those up initially to about where they're around 35, 34, that's good enough. Close that. Hit Shift, Control, Alt, E again to create a new layer on top of the curves layer. Go back into Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Levels. And again, what we're going to do, see the histogram is starting to get wider, so that means we're stretching the histogram, we're pulling more detail and information out of it. You can see the Orion Nebula starting to take shape, and oops, I didn't mean to do that, set that other point. So now I'm going to again drop these numbers here on RGB on the reference point down. So I'll go here, click red, move this black point slider in until I get 19 again. Sometimes it can be a little bit finicky. I might have to change these numbers here. Go into green, move this black point slider over, watch the reference point, numbers decrease. Set that to 19 and then blue. So see, now the blue is almost up to the edge of the histogram. We never want to bring the black slider past the edge of the histogram. That's very important to keep in mind. So let's see, Shift Control Alt E again. I might be able to do another levels adjustment layer, new adjustment layer, curves adjustment, I'm sorry. As you can see, we're kind of almost, this black point is right up to the edge, so I don't know if I can actually stretch this anymore. So I'm not gonna do that, because this means we've stretched it pretty much as far as we can get it. I'm going to delete this curves adjustment layer. Just drag this down to the trash can. Now what I'm going to do is there's a slight gradient. You probably can't see it. That's kind of what happens, and to get rid of the gradient, the easiest thing that you need to do, in my opinion, is to just buy an add-on called Gradient Xterminator, and it's about 50 bucks. You might think that's a little bit much, but it's well worth it if you're going to be processing these astro images, because I think there's other ways to get rid of gradients. I've watched some videos on that on YouTube, but it seems a little involved, and this is just really a lot easier, and it's recommended. It's part of my workflow. So I go in, well, first I don't want Gradient Xterminator to interfere or do anything to the Orion Nebula and the Running Man here. So I'm going to outline these items here, select them with the lasso tool, hit select inverse. So that means it's selecting everything that's outside of what's in the lasso, because I want Gradient Xterminator to work on everything that's outside of what's in the lasso or the nebula. I go to Filter, RC Astro, Gradient Xterminator. I usually first do medium, hit OK. That'll get rid of any type of gradients that may be present in the image. You can see, if we could see, the image got smoothed out, not as blotchy looking. I hit Control D to get rid of the selection. You can see it bumped our numbers up a little bit. So I'll hit Shift Control Alt E again, create a new layer. Again, go into Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Levels. So we're going to go in, and after running Gradient Xterminator, see, it does move the histogram over. So now I have a little more space to stretch. So I'm going to move these numbers back down to 19. Green to 19. Here we go, and blue to 19. Close that out. Now I'm going to hit Shift Control Alt E again to create a new layer on top. I'm going to see if I can stretch this a little one more time using curves. Hit OK. See, there's room here on the left of the chart with the histogram. So I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to maybe do a little softer, less intense stretch, maybe just 25. This will start pulling out more of that nebulosity. Do Shift Control Alt E, Again, we're just going back to levels, layer, image adjustment, levels. Hit OK. See if I have enough room on the left side where I can move the black point in to 19, green to 19, and then blue to 19. Shift Control Alt E again, create a new layer. I think we can do another curve since we have some more space to play with on the left side of the histogram to stretch it a little bit more. So we have some space here. Again, I'm going to go up, let's say to about 26. Small increments is best. You don't want to just make huge adjustments. Shift Control Alt E again, create a new layer. Go into layer, new layer adjustment, levels. Should know the drill by now. Go in, move the black point to 19 on each channel. See, now the black point is approaching the side of the histogram, so we might be able to do another curves stretch. Again, like I said, that Gradient Xterminator is something I highly recommend. Shift Control Alt E. Layer, new adjustment layer, curves again. Okay. Still got a little room. Let's do it again. Pull this up. See how the nebulosity, watch as I pull this up, just comes out. We'll do up to here. Close that. Shift Control Alt E. And we're going to go back again into levels, new adjustment layer, levels. Okay. Again, adjust the black point. I'm getting close here, so I'm going to just say 20. Green. I'll go 20. And blue. 20. Close that out. So I think that's pretty as far as we can stretch it. Then what I'm going to do is Shift Control Alt E, just create a new layer on top. Now I got a whole bunch of layers going here, right, as you can see. That's really making the file large. So what I'm going to do is just merge this layer 7, everything below this top layer, all the way down to background. I'm going to hit Shift and then left click. That's going to select all the layers from background up to level 7. Click here on background, right click, merge layers. That's going to merge all these layers that I selected, reduce the size of the image. Here might be a good point in time to save the file. I'm going to do Save As. So I'm just going to say Orion Demo TIFF and hit Save. This will say including layers will increase file size. That's okay since I only have two layers. But now as we can zoom in, you can see how that's looking pretty good. So let me back out. Now the next thing I'm going to do is run an action that's part of the, I think, Astronomy Tools Action Kit. And this is another add-on you can get. I would highly suggest or recommend that you get this action as well. It's only about $22. And there's here, going to Windows, hit Actions. This will pull up, and I'm going to do what is called the Enhanced DSO, or Enhanced Deep Sky Object, and Reduce Stars. I'm going to press this and then hit the Run button, and it's going to run. It's going to run for a while, take a while. So I'm going to be back once this finishes running. Well, I'm back. It took about at least 15 minutes to process this image, but let's see how it did. This is the after and before, after. It did change these black point reference numbers, so I'm going to do Shift Control Alt E, the new layer, new layer adjustment levels. Again, we're going to go in and bring each one down as much as we can. I don't have a whole lot of room. Maybe only to there. I'm going to say 25. Green 25. Oops. And then blue 25. So what I've read, they said the final image, if the black area, black point, dark sky is between 25 and 30, that seems to be the kind of the appropriate or the best levels that you want your black points to be, so I'm okay with that. I could try to go in and do another Gradient Xterminator, but I don't see really any gradient, so I'm going to move on to the next step. So here I'm going to run in the Astronomy Tools Action Set. There's a space noise reduction. Well, let me do Shift Control Alt E, create a new layer. Hit space noise reduction. I'm going to run that. And this one really doesn't take that long, so I can let the run with the video. And then after this, I'm going to do deep space noise reduction to kind of remove any noise that's in the image. I also have on here Topaz Denoise. I'm a photographer, so I already had Photoshop and Topaz Denoise, so it's nothing unusual. But if you don't have that, you don't really need it. And I'm going to do deep space noise reduction and run that. And it's not going to take too long. But as you can see, the image is shaping up very nicely from where we started. It was so dark we could hardly see anything. And we've stretched the image, pulling out the detail and pulling out the nebulosity. The next thing I'm going to do is go back into, well, so you can see the image. Let's zoom in. Noise doesn't look bad, so I think I'm okay with that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is Shift Control Alt E. I'm going to go back in now and do some kind of refinement curves reduction, curves enhancements. So what I'm going to do is click the hand icon. I'm going to set a black point on this line anywhere where there's not a star, say like right here or maybe here. So that set the point right here on the histogram. So I don't want the black point changing, and I'm going to click here in this very light and bright area. I don't want that point changing. I'm going to zoom in a little here. I don't maybe not want to blow this part out here. I can set this point here, so now we have these points, so the curve is not going to move here. What you can do, I'm going to click, I will maybe bring up this area here. I'm going to left click, hold it down, and just move my mouse up, and see how the curve on the right is moving up. So I don't want to make too big of a change. See how that brought out the nebulosity that was around the Running Man and Orion Nebula. The dark point stayed where it was, and these points didn't move up. So here's a before, and now here's the after. And you can see here in the reference black point, that point really didn't go up. So I don't really want that moving. So that's a way to pull out more nebulosity here. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to do Shift Control Alt E again, create a new layer. Oops, I created the layer below. I'm going to do Edit, Undo, make sure Curves is this level is selected. Shift Control Alt E, that'll place the layer above the selected layer. Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Curves again. So we're going to repeat that last step. Click the hand icon, click in a dark area to set the black point, click here, so I don't want this blowing out. You can click here, I don't really want that blowing out too much. Try to bring this out a little bit more. Click left click, hold it down and pull up. That brought out the nebulosity. Very slight increase, so you don't want to do anything real drastic. So here we can see a before and after. So I think, I don't know if I want to mess with that too much more right now. I'm going to come back out, fit on screen. Now what I'm going to do is go back into create another layer, Shift Control Alt E, and go into the Astronomy Tools Action Set again, Windows Actions. Like I said, I highly recommend you get this. I'm going to do what's called Local Contrast Enhancement, and it's going to bring out the contrast in the image. This I think is going to take a little bit longer than the noise reduction actions, but then we could see the before and after. Okay, now this is finished running. We'll see the before and after. See, this is before, so that really sharpened up the image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this image. See, the reference black point has stayed in a good area, so I'm okay with that. I'm going to crop this so you can get a kind of a better view of what's going on here. And see how that looks. Now I'm going to go into Shift Control Alt E. I'm going to go into Layers, New Adjustment Layer, Hue Saturation. Hit OK. I can hit the hand icon. I can click here in this red area. That's saying that's the magentas. I can increase the saturation. See how that's getting redder or more red. Maybe I'll bump that up. So that's the before, after, before, subtle, but you can see it made a little change. I may bump that up, say 35. Then I can also go in here, maybe the blue channel, and maybe play around with that a little bit. See, the nebulosity is kind of blue, so that's punching that out. So that's before, it's after. So that's made a nice little difference. I'm going to close that out. Now, what I kind of like to do sometimes, this is maybe optional. I'm going to make another layer, Shift Control Alt E. I'm going to go in and go into Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Go into Camera Raw. And play around here. I might like to bring up the exposure just a little bit, maybe by 10 or 15. There's before and after. Sometimes look, see what the contrast will do. Maybe about 5. You don't want to make this too much. Sometimes the highlights, pop those out a little bit, maybe 10. And maybe back that down to 5 or 7. This is all by personal taste. Clarity, I don't like to do texture here because it's gonna bring out, well, a lot of times it brings out the stars too much, but it does bring out some of the texture in the nebula itself. We can maybe do a 7, 6 on that. Clarity, so it's bringing out the nebulosity. I think I'm going to do 15 on that. Before, after. I think that's good. You can also mess around with the vibrant saturation. I think we're getting maybe a tad bit of noise, so what I'm going to do is click here for detail, go down to noise reduction luminance, and move this up maybe to like 25 or so. I could go back into Photoshop and use Topaz Denoise, but that kind of smooth that out. I think that's all I'm going to do here. Click OK. So this is what we did in Camera Raw. So the Running Man Nebula stands out. See a little bit more nebulosity around here. And you can do more adjustments, but I think I'm going to call that done. Well, let me try one thing. Shift Control Alt E. You can go in here, maybe if you want to try to sharpen and do a filter, sharpen, smart sharpen. Use 100 amount, radius 0.5, noise reduction 10. See, that didn't really do anything much for the image, so I'm going to cancel that. There's another filter, sharpen. We can try unsharp mask. Amount 100, radius 2, threshold 6. So you can see that made the stars pop more, but it doesn't seem to have done much to the nebula, so I'm not going to really worry about that. So I don't really want the stars to pop out that much. So I'm going to cancel that. So I'm going to say for now this image is done. You can go in if you want to, for example, say mess around layers, new adjustment layer, brightness and contrast, and play around if you want to brighten it up a little bit. Maybe play with the contrast. So that kind of pop that out a little bit. This is kind of blowing out. But let's see, Shift Control Alt E. And I'm going to merge all these layers from brightness all the way down to background. Hit Shift, left click, and right click, merge layers. Oops. I did the wrong thing. So undo, go to Edit, undo, merge visible. Hit merge layers. So now I can save this. File, save as. I'll save it the same Orion Demo TIFF, and I can save that. This, yes. Then I'm going to go in and file, save as. If it's still saving, that's why I got that error message. I think it's saved it now. Here, save as. I'm going to say change this to JPEG. Change this to JPEG and then save. So that's the Orion Nebula. I think that turned out pretty neat. Pretty cool. We can go in and let's see what the JPEG looks like. This is the folder. Orion Demo JPEG right here. I think that's a pretty good, cool shot of the Orion Nebula and the Running Man. Yes, you can see the Running Man clearly here. So I hope that helped you out. You found that this video helpful and interesting. And I know it was kind of a big issue for me when I first started processing. How do you do all these things? Let me have this typed up and see if maybe I can put it at the in the description of the video, the different steps. But thanks for watching, and see you later. Goodbye.